right, another Ironman Texas done and dusted. This is, I think, my 8th race there. I've had some really good days there and a couple really bad days, and then I guess this would be my second one that's just kind of in the middle. Nothing overly spectacular about the day from across the board. Swim, bike, run, I was pretty average on everything, and so like to come away with 7th with that field, obviously that wasn't the aspiration that I had going in, but given the performance that I put out across the board, being able to still be relatively in the mix, had a chance to fight for the top 5 on the day coming off of the bike, and so all in all it was fine. Got the Kona slot, which is obviously that was priority number 1. Well, priority number 2. Number 1 was getting off the bike without another accident. So yeah, got those 2 things done. Would have loved to be a little bit further up the leaderboard, but you've got to, with these deep fields, you've got to be firing on all cylinders. There's no real room for weakness, and I kind of put myself on the back foot straight out of the water. Didn't have a great swim. I'm a little bit surprised at how everything shook out in the swim. There were some guys that went really fast, but a lot of guys that were really slow. So it was a lot more spread out than it normally would have been. And in terms of my specific situation, I was pretty much in line with where I wanted to be. I was I kind of always try to pick 5 or 6 guys and that I know are going to be where, in the mix of where I want to be. And I was 3 guys behind one of my targets. So I was really happy with that. And then about 500 or 600 meters in, somebody literally in the line just stopped swimming, like sat up, and it stopped. And my first thought was he paid to do that? Because it blew everything up. And yeah, it was rather annoying. I tried to go too wide and bridge the gap. I should have just kind of slipstream everybody. I thought if I went wide, I could get the gap and then not bring everybody forward with me. It was a risk, and it was a gamble, and I lost that gamble. I wasn't able to. I was able to get within about 8 meters. 10, I felt like less than 10. But by the turn, I just couldn't hold on at that pace any longer, and then moved myself back a little bit in the group to just kind of reset after a fairly hard effort of chasing. That's the crappy part about open water swimming is if you're in the group, you're going the speed of the fastest person in the group, and once that gap opens up, you've got to go faster than the fastest person in the next group to close it, and I just couldn't do that. And so I guess, again, another lesson learned in hanging out a little bit too far back. I was in the group that I wanted to be in when things started to settle, but something happened and I just hadn't had enough time to recover from the first 500 to be able to close the gap. And that put me on the back foot. I was chasing all day from then on, and then onto the bike. I was riding well. The power was there. I think my first 2-hour power was about 10 watts higher than it was at Oceanside, which I kind of, if you watch that video, you saw that I was just couldn't get anything going there. I felt good here, and I knew that Joe and Chris Leiferman and a couple of guys were going to come through and ride really hard. And going into the headwind section, they caught up and they were riding hard, and I was hanging on to the back of the pack, and obviously heat and humidity were going to be a factor on the day, and so they passed a group that had fallen off the front already. So then, I was on the back of that group, and then by the time I got in front of the 3 guys or 4 guys that group had overtaken, a gap had formed, and then it was the decision of, do I bury myself and try to get back with those 3 guys or 4 guys, or do I just kind of accept it and then ride it a little bit more the power that I was wanting to hold. in my mind, I thought that I could ride with them through the end of the first lap for sure, and then it would be real tough to go with those guys on the second headwind stretch. I knew I was going to have to dig to get to the end of the first. I ended up letting them go because the heart rate was a little bit higher than I wanted it to be that deep into the ride, and turned out to be a smart decision because those guys, I don't know if it was the conditions or what, but all of them seemed to struggle a bit on the run. So I think for me it was the right decision. They were riding really well, and it would have taken too much of a toll for me. And in those conditions, it's going to be a battle of attrition on the run. Got to the run, and kind of was doing the mental math right away. First objective was to get the Kona slot, and to be honest, I got off the bike and I had no idea where I was in terms of place. Like at the end of the first loop, I think I was sitting in 26th is what I counted, and so I kind of assumed that I was there. I knew we had picked off a few people, but I didn't realize that I had moved up a fair amount, and that a lot of that race had come back to me. And so I was, had a little bit of a down moment coming out of T1, and then got the first splits, and like, okay, 10th is literally 90 seconds up the road, and or maybe a little bit more than that, but it was definitely easy, within, it was mine to, the Kona slot at that point was mine to not screw up. And I felt good and was running well, so I started asking for splits to 5th, and that's kind of where my head was at, where I think I should have been able to do if I would have ran well. And I was on pace after 2 laps to run a 2:35, which would have put me 5th and pretty comfortably in 5th. But things unraveled a little bit on that third loop. I missed a number of aid stations on the bike, some of them intentionally, because I made the choice to stick with the group that I was in instead of having to slow down too much and try to get the second bottle or get another bottle. Just kind of the way things shook out, I knew it was going to come back and haunt me, so I tried to be a little bit conservative and not go out as fast as I normally would have on the run. And I ended up having a rough last 10K. And pretty much everybody did, except for the guy that I was chasing for 6th. I had whittled that down to about 40 seconds, but at the end of the day, or at the end of the run, he was able to hold on and if not speed up a bit, and he ended up about 90 seconds in front of me then. So overall, again, not super thrilled about the day, but I'm not upset about it either. It was an average day on an average performance. And a couple other things that I guess weren't directly related to my performance. Race Ranger was a great addition. I was very worried about how this race was going to shake out. Really happy that Ironman it has been using that, and that it worked for this race. I've only had the opportunity to use it a couple times. I've noticed that I'm not very good at riding anywhere near 12 meters. What I think is 12 meters is probably more like 15. And so it actually helps me, feel a little bit more comfortable riding a little bit closer in the groups. And, I hope it helps with the individual accountability. You can't always see what's going on up the road, but, it at least makes it a little bit more objective, and so I'm happy about that. And then obviously there was a number of great performances, and anytime you kind of get it handed to you, you got to tip your cap and go back to the drawing board and figure out how to do things a little bit differently, or where you can improve to close the gap, or find a way to make that gap disappear completely. So hats off to all the men up front, and like I said in the last video, it was a good first race, first Ironman of the year to really show where the bar is at right now, and now it's just about cleaning things up a little bit to get to that bar. And the good thing is I really, the top 3 guys rode within 3 minutes of me, and ran where I typically would be running, and so if I have a little bit better swim, that puts me in the mix. So it was encouraging on that front, but they were solid in all 3, and that's what you're going to have to be to get the result. Obviously a little beat up, healthy, but I don't think I'm going to be in shape or in form to go to St. George this weekend. So I pulled my name off the start list for that. I think the swim and bike would have been good for me, just to get a little bit, to try a couple more things there. But the downhill running, I just don't think I'll be ready for. So Chattanooga will be next, then Boulder, then I'll take a little bit of a break, and then obviously I've got Lake Placid and Kona on the start list. I might race in between there. That's a pretty big stretch without racing in the middle of the season, but that's TBD still. But those are the Pro Series races that I've still got on the target, and then we'll figure out after Kona. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. Yeah, we'll see you next time.